It's really impressive, I must admit, and it's amazing for the game. I think that they play back to back to back to back.
There's a specific kind of silence a broadcaster makes right before he says something he actually means. It's shorter than a pause and longer than a breath. If you've watched enough tennis on television, you learn to recognize it. On a rainy afternoon in Miami earlier this year, during a live segment of Tennis Channel Live, a man in his 60s wearing a blue shirt made that silence. Then, Paul Annacone, the coach who spent 3 years in Roger Federer's box and before that helped Pete Sampras hold the #1 ranking, leaned toward the microphone and started talking unprompted about a 21-year-old from Quezon City. Her name is Alex Eala. He said her smile lit up a room. He said she had grace. And then, almost in passing, he used a specific technical phrase, 4 words long, that he had spent much of his coaching life trying to sharpen in 2 of the greatest players who ever lived. So here is the question this video is going to try to answer. Why did the coach whose professional reputation was built on the art of taking time away from an opponent stop mid-broadcast on a rainy day in Miami to point at a 21-year-old Filipina and say, quietly, almost as an afterthought, that she can already do it? On the surface, it looks like a standard broadcast moment. Analyst previews a tournament. Analyst says nice things about a rising player. Fans clip it. Everybody moves on. If you stop at that level, you miss what actually happened. A coach whose entire resume sits inside one stylistic tradition of tennis, the aggressive first strike, redirect the ball baseliner, placed Alex Eala inside that tradition on live television. He did not raise his voice. He did not dress it up. He simply said it. And nobody in the studio pushed back, because on some level everyone knew he was right. The question is not whether Annacone praised her. He did. The question is what he was actually praising and why. 5 months later, that praise is starting to look less like a compliment and more like a diagnosis. That is the story. Alex Eala is 21. She is the first Filipina to break into the WTA top 20 and currently sits at a career-high world number 20. In 2026, she has compiled a strong tour record and captured her first WTA singles title, not a minor event, but the Mubadala City DC Open, a WTA 500. She won it by beating Naomi Osaka, Elina Svitolina, and then world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the final. That is the shape of the year. What matters for the reframe is a smaller detail. In early March, when Paul Annacone said her name on television, she was ranked 32nd in the world, had 0 WTA titles, and had never beaten a top 3 player. Hold on to that. It is going to matter differently by the end. Here are the pieces of the segment that do not fully add up under the obvious explanation. First paradox. Annacone opened by praising her manners. He said her smile lights up a room. He said that when she beat Iga Swiatek in Miami the previous year, she did it with a lot of grace and humility. Elite coaches do not usually spend national television time on etiquette. Annacone has coached players who won a combined 22 Grand Slams. His words on a Tennis Channel segment are a scarce resource. So why open an Indian Wells preview by talking about how well-mannered she was on a court she had left almost 18 months earlier? Second paradox. In the same breath, he did something broadcasters almost never do in a preview. He named her exact ranking. Obviously, she wants to get better than where she is now at 32 in the world. Most analysts round. They say just outside the top 30, or climbing. Annacone gave the number, then immediately pivoted into technical vocabulary. She has good hand-eye coordination and the ability to take the ball early and redirect. That is coach-to-coach language, not standard preview show language. Why choose those words on that broadcast for that player? Third paradox, he closed by talking about her fans. The fan stuff is always fun to me, because whenever you see players from smaller countries, the fans are so passionate when they get to the top. That is not a coaching observation. That is a commercial observation about audience, market, and the shape of a career outside the white lines. What is a former Federer coach doing framing a 21-year-old's fan base as an asset in the same 45 seconds where he also talked about her forehand? Hold all 3. In the end, they collapse into one simpler sentence. Here is the reading. This is an interpretation of a public broadcast based on the words Annacone chose and the resume he brings to those words. It is not something he sat down and explained. It is something the transcript rewards you for noticing. Most people assumed Annacone praised Eala because she is a promising young player and he happened to like her game. That is the frame the clip has traveled inside. Federer's coach said nice things. Feel good. Move on. But that is not the most interesting version of what happened. In roughly 45 seconds of live television, Paul Annacone quietly diagnosed in the specific vocabulary of a coach the two exact assets that make Alex Eala structurally valuable to the WTA right now. One is technical, one is commercial. He named them in that order because that is the order they matter in, and because he has spent his adult life watching promising young players either become great or not. The grace and humility opener was not etiquette talk. It was Annacone locating her temperamentally, signaling that she has the psychological equipment to survive the noise that comes with being the first Filipina operating at this level. The take the ball early and redirect comment was not a generic compliment. It was Annacone placing her inside the technical lineage he knows better than almost anyone alive. A player whose game is built around the skill that produced Grand Slam champions in his own coaching career. And the small country fanbase line at the end was not a throwaway. It was Annacone noting on a WTA broadcast partner that this player is a business asset as well as a competitive one. 3 sentences, 3 assets, 1 diagnosis. The reason most viewers needed a second listen is that Annacone does not broadcast loudly. He talks the way coaches talk. None of that would matter if the diagnosis had not held up. Coaches say things on television every week. What separates this segment is what has happened in the 5 months since, and whether the specific things he named have actually appeared on court. Proof number 1 is the number. When Annacone spoke, Eala was ranked 32. As of this week, she is ranked 20, the first Filipina inside the WTA top 20. In the intervening months, she has beaten Donna Vekic, Jasmine Paolini, Elena Gabriela Rus, Naomi Osaka, Elina Svitolina, and Jessica Pegula. That list includes a former Slam finalist, former top 5 players, a Grand Slam champion, and the world number 3. Annacone had said he liked watching her continue to progress. 12 ranking places, a WTA 500 title, and a win over a top 3 player in 5 months is not soft progress. It is the trajectory the diagnosis pointed toward. Proof number 2 is the vocabulary. When Annacone said Eala has the ability to take the ball early and redirect, he was not reaching for the nearest available compliment. That phrase is a category. In coaching language, taking the ball early means striking it on the rise before it reaches the top of its bounce, which compresses the opponent's recovery time. Redirecting means changing the direction of a ball hit cross-court into a down-the-line reply, or vice versa, forcing the opponent to move against their own momentum. Those two skills together form the technical DNA of first strike tennis. It is the skill Sampras used to shorten points on his own serve. It is the skill Federer used to build the most famous inside-out forehand in the sport's history. Annacone spent years sharpening exactly those instincts in those two players. When a man with that biography says on live television that a 21-year-old already possesses them, he is not paying a compliment. He is placing her inside the language of his own tradition. It is the difference between a chef saying your soup tastes nice and a chef correctly naming the 3 ingredients you used. Kim Clijsters, earlier in the year, had spoken in a similar register about Eala's belief in poise. The pattern matters. Elite voices are beginning to describe her in the language of how she plays, not only in the language of where she is from or how many followers she has. Proof number 3 is the 3rd set of the DC Open final. Eala walked onto center court in Washington against Jessica Pegula, the same Pegula who had beaten her in the Miami semifinal the year before, the match Annacone had specifically referenced. Pegula won the first set 6-4. That is a match the March version of Eala would likely have lost. Pegula is not a big hitter. She is an absorber. She takes your pace and returns it with interest, and she almost never makes a physical error. To beat her, you have to give her a ball she cannot reach. In the second set, something shifted. Eala took it 6-4. In the third set, on the biggest stage of her career against the world number 3, she won 6 games in a row, 6-0. The final score, 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. The first WTA 500 title in Philippine tennis history. Watch that third set with Annacone's comment in your ear, and the pattern is visible. Eala takes Pegula's ball on the rise. She redirects cross-court balls down the line before Pegula can reset. She compresses recovery time point after point until one of the best absorbers in the game is reaching for balls. She no longer has time to organize. That is not coincidence. That is a specific technical skill applied at a specific competitive altitude, producing a specific result. Annacone had said on national television that Eala possessed the skill and could get better with it. 5 months later, in front of a crowd of Filipino fans in Washington, the small country passion he had also flagged, she used it to win her first title. The diagnosis held. A few necessary limits, because a story is only as trustworthy as the parts it is willing to leave off the scoreboard. This does not prove that Paul Annacone thinks Alex Eala is going to win a Grand Slam. He did not say that. What he said was that she wants to get better than where she is now, a forward-looking observation, not a prediction. Do not let anyone upgrade the quote into an anointing. It was not one. It also does not prove that Annacone sat down that day intending to make a statement. He was previewing Indian Wells. She was a talking point, and he answered thoughtfully. The interpretive weight placed on the segment, the reading that his vocabulary functioned as a diagnosis rather than simple praise, is a reading. It is grounded in what he said and in the career he has lived, but it remains a reading. The most honest version is that a very qualified man watched Alex Eala play, chose his words carefully on live television, and turned out to be right about the things he named. That is already substantial. It does not need to be more than that to matter. One more piece of honesty. In Cincinnati, Eala lost in the round of 32 to Amanda Anisimova, the world number 10, in 3 sets. It was her first tournament as a top 20 player, and she went out in the second round. That result sits inside the same story as the DC title. The player who can compress time against Pegula on a Sunday can still lose a close third set to Anisimova on a Tuesday. Both are true. The trajectory Annacone flagged is real. It is not linear. It never is. What we are looking at is this. In the first week of March, on a rainy day in Miami, on a preview show, most tennis fans did not stop to rewatch. Paul Annacone said Alex Eala's name into a microphone and used the specific technical vocabulary he had once used inside Pete Sampras's and Roger Federer's boxes to describe what she does with a tennis ball. He did it without fanfare. He did it in the same 45 seconds where he also noted her temperament and her commercial appeal, because he is a man who has watched a lot of promising 21-year-olds either become significant or not, and he knows that the process is technical, temperamental, and commercial all at once. He named all 3 on air before most of the world realized they were watching a future top 20 player. 5 months later, she is a top 20 player. She has beaten the world number 3 in a final. She has done it in the exact manner he described. The room where Paul Annacone names you unprompted, in the vocabulary he used to coach Grand Slam champions, is not a room a number 32 player is usually invited into. That she was invited into it, and that she has since spent 5 months demonstrating she belonged there, is the whole story. It is not a coronation. Nobody is anointing her the next anything. It is something quieter and more durable. The sound of the professional tennis world beginning to describe Alex Eala in the language of what she does rather than only in the language of what she represents. That is a different room than the one she occupied a year ago. And the people inside it are already using her first name. Annacone opened by praising her smile and closed by praising her hands. Which of those two do you think is actually what got him watching in the first place? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe if you have not already. Alex Eala walks into the US Open main draw next week as a top 20 seed for the first time in Philippine history. This channel will be there for every round of it. Tennis Diaries, where the ones who heard the 4-word diagnosis stay until the trajectory confirms it.